Since he became the commissioner of the league in 1992, Gary Bettman has broken and beaten down what was once one of the strongest unions in sports, the NHLPA. He has cost the NHL a season and a half through labor disputes, pausing the league at its hottest in 1994 and then again in 2005. He has been a menace to the sport and players, but a shining crusader for the NHL's owners. Here at the 2012 draft, an expiring CBA looms over the proceedings, and Bettman is out for blood yet again. The salary cap, a Bettman victory from the 2005 lockout, sits at 57% of hockey-related revenue. That number is coming down. But there are still a few months to figure this out. It would be preposterous for the league to cancel games for the third time in less than 20 years, so a deal will likely get done before the September deadline.
Oh, hold that. Hockey commissioner clearly had the opportunity to hold the doors and allow me access to said elevator in question.
Tonight, in Pittsburgh, the Oilers will try to put the league's turmoil out of their mind as they head to the podium for their third first overall pick in a row. Plus, they have their own off-ice issues. There's little doubt about who they will pick as all cameras point to nail Yakupov, the electric Russian winger from the Sarnia Sting.
The Edmonton Oilers are so proud to select from the Sarnia Sting, Nail Yakupov.
Wait, who is that up on stage with him? With the gray hair? That isn't Tom Rennie. It's Craig McTavish. McTavish is back as Senior VP of Hockey Operations, which should put him right up with Tambellini and Lowe in the chain of command. Weird, given that Tambellini is who canned McTavish just 3 years earlier. Tambellini's been doing a bit of canning this offseason too, parting ways with coach Tom Rennie. While Rennie wasn't technically fired, his contract was just allowed to expire. It doesn't seem like it was a mutual decision.
My reaction, obviously, to not coming back was one of real disappointment.
Here at the draft, the Oilers don't actually have a coach. They're still looking for a guy. Their solution will come from in-house, much like it did when Rennie was hired. Taking the mantle of head coach is one of Rennie's assistants, Ralph Krueger. Krueger was a longtime coach in Europe, but burst onto teams' radars during the 2006 Olympics, where he led a Swiss team with only 3 NHL players to the quarterfinals and a 6th-place finish, the country's best placement since 1952.
Shot ricocheted in front, they score! DiPietro, a 5-on-3.
The Manitoba-born son of German immigrants is seen as a coach on the cutting edge, an extremely intelligent man and a brilliant defensive tactician. Rennie was the teacher for the young guys. Krueger is the man to take them to the next level. It helps that Krueger is close with Hall, a kid that, fairly or unfairly, has a reputation as an immature party boy. To go with their defensive-minded coach, the Oilers get another exciting improvement for their blue line the day before free agency. College free agent Justin Schultz. Schultz is set to slot into the Oilers lineup immediately following 3 terrific years at Wisconsin. He is an offensive juggernaut who racked up 16 goals and 44 points his junior season as he waited for the Anaheim Ducks draft rights to expire. Schultz could have chosen nearly any team in the league, with the Canadian press reporting that 26 teams had interest. He landed on the Oilers. It does make sense. Schultz is from Western Canada, and while Kelowna, British Columbia is 9 hours away from Edmonton by car, Alberta's capital is certainly closer than the East Coast or Southern California. More importantly, Schultz lines up perfectly with this team's time frame. He turns 22 on July 6th, 2 months younger than Eberle. He should bloom at the same time as the rest of this team. Soon. And, of course, a call from 2 of the greatest players ever helped seal the deal. After the Schultz signing, the Oilers don't really do anything in terms of bringing in new blood.
You got to be careful on a day like today that you don't do anything stupid. We're not desperate, so you can be a little bit more selective.
The first day of free agency, they retain Ryan Smyth for cheap at only $2.25 million per year for 2 years, and bring back Darcy Hordichuk. The priority this offseason is locking in the core, not adding to it. First, they take care of the RFAs with fair raises to Dubnyk, Petrie, Gagne, and Peckham. Next, Yakupov signs his ELC. Normally not a noteworthy deal, but it was important with a potential lockout looming overhead. Yakupov's signing makes sure the Oilers retain his rights should he go to the KHL. He won't be able to do what Schultz just did to Anaheim and wait out his draft rights. The potential lockout is starting to look more and more likely as the owners' demands become public. The owners aim to hack the players' share of hockey-related revenue from 57% to 46%, compacting the salary cap significantly. But that isn't all. A maximum contract length would be set at 5 years, entry-level deals lengthened to 5 years from 3, a 10-year wait to unrestricted free agency, and the removal of salary arbitration for restricted free agents. The players do not want this deal, and it is not hard to see why. It also isn't hard to see why the Oilers are apprehensive about spending money on free agents. If the cap contracts, they could very suddenly be unable to sign their young stars, with Eberle and Hall each having only 1 year left on their rookie deals. To add insult to injury, Daryl Katz is now putting the screws to the city of Edmonton after his arena plan came in over budget. Katz has been trying to get a new arena since buying the team and had an agreement in place with the city to build one for $450 million, with the cost dispersed between him, the province, federal dollars, and the city. But the city won't budge on the extra they've now been quoted, so we're locked in a stalemate. Amidst all the uncertainty, the Oilers lock up their 2 stars. First, Taylor Hall for 6x7, then a week later, Jordan Eberle at 6x6. Both contracts will kick in for the 2013-14 season. In September, the NHL officially locks its players out yet again, delaying the start of the season.
We've been willing to give concessions on the growth of our salaries. We'd like to help out those teams that are, really struggling, and there's no doubt there are.
That same month, Daryl Katz engages in talks to move the Oilers to Seattle if they don't get their new arena. The team and league are in turmoil, but they march on. The NHL players are scattered throughout the world in search of places to play, and the Oilers are no exception. For the younger players, the decision is easy, as Hall, Eberle, Schultz, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Magnus Pajärvi, and others report to the Oklahoma City Barons of the AHL. The 2 Czechs, Ladislav Smyth and Aleš Hemsky, head back to their home country to play. Sam Gagner and Linus Ullmark are too old for the AHL, so they head to Austria and Switzerland respectively, with Ullmark likely to stay overseas until the Oilers find him a new home, following a trade request. Most of the veteran North Americans, including Ryan Smyth, Sean Horkoff, Ryan Whitney, and Devin Dubnyk, elect to stay home and wait it out. Yakupov is the strange case. Right before the lockout started, the Oilers assigned him back to Sarnia of the OHL. Yakupov, who is well beyond the CHL's developmental ceiling, signs with his hometown team in the Russian KHL instead. After his first 2 games in the KHL, Hockey Canada declares war over the young forward. Yakupov is still under contract to Sarnia, and Hockey Canada has not signed the transfer agreement that would allow him to play in Russia. The IIHF is therefore forced to suspend the player and allow Hockey Canada to present its case to keep him. Hockey Canada wants desperately to retain its import players' rights, forcing them to stay in the CHL until they jump to the NHL or age into the AHL. It's a blatantly short-sighted move, as laid out by Neat Seeger of Yahoo Sports. The kids in the CHL aren't getting paid, and even players in the NHL can leave and go back to their own countries. This case has no legs to stand on and sours an already fragile relationship with the Russian Ice Hockey Federation. Yakupov had a KHL contract when he first joined the CHL, but the RIHF signed the transfer without issue. Trying to make the transfer pipeline a one-way street could very likely make it a no-way street. Hockey Canada abdicates 3 days later, allowing Yakupov to play in Russia.
Before game time, and Team Russia has already arrived at the arena and begun their warm-up. The question remains the same. How will Sarnia fans receive Yakupov?
For what it's worth, the Oilers seem perfectly fine with Yakupov playing in Russia, with the Edmonton Journal's Jim Matheson saying they may even prefer it. The Oilers and Hockey Canada have long been partners, so I personally wonder if it was internal pressure from the Oilers that got Hockey Canada to stand down, but that's just conjecture. As non-NHL seasons start, there are some good signs for the Oilers. Schultz is as advertised, as he, Eberle, and Hall tear up the AHL. Nuge is hurt for a long stretch and Payarvi is failing to impress, but overall, the Barons are looking good. Yakupov is exceptional in Russia for a teenager, scoring at a similar pace to productive former NHL wingers Alex Frolov and Nikolai Zherdev. Negotiations to resume the season are going poorly. Come December, the players are on the verge of dissolving their own union to invoke antitrust laws that could end the lockout. Luckily, it doesn't come to that. On January 6, 2013, the two sides finally come to an agreement. They've landed on an approximately 50-50 split of revenue, a 7 or 8 if re-signing, year limit to contract length, new limits to bonus structuring, and 4 amnesty buyouts for each team, which will be split between the 2013-14 and 14-15 seasons. While they protected entry-level contracts, one of the least fair practices in North American sports, from getting any worse, it's another massive defeat for the players. They have lost months of work, games off their careers, and hits to their reputations just to have their lunch eaten by the owners yet again. At least there will be a season, 48 games long, starting January 19th. In other bright news, it looks like the Edmonton City Council has given in to Cates' arm twisting and a new arena is almost a certainty. It will be confirmed soon, and its first game slated for the 2016-17 season. Though Cates apologized for his antics in Seattle, Edmonton Mayor Stephen Mandel will say to the CBC years later that losing the Oilers was a genuine fear for the city. The opening night of the season, the day before the Oilers' own opener, the Edmonton Journal's Jonathan Willis posts the final lines. The forwards look strong aside from a pretty ugly fourth line, but this team should be able to score some goals. Hobby Bulin is injured, so Dubnyk is the unquestioned starter, backed up for now by journeyman Jan Denis. It's the defense that's horrifying. The top pairing of Smyth and Petrie, they're proven commodities, but commodities that most teams would prefer in their second or even third pairings. The next duo is the Schultzes, Nick and Justin. One all defense, one all offense. Could be interesting, but it would have been nice to shelter the younger Schultz a bit more. The bottom pair is Ryan Whitney with either Corey Potter or Mark Fistrick, both standard 6th, 7th defensemen. Whitney has been so battered over the past 2 seasons, and it's really gotten to his play. He still has the puck skills, but his multiple foot and ankle injuries have eroded his mobility. For this team to be competitive, they'll need to add on defense, because this group isn't going to cut it. The Oilers fall behind 2-0 to the Canucks on night 1, but new alternate captain Jordan Eberle scores a highlight reel goal to cut into the lead. Dubnyk locks in the third, and Ales Hemsky ties it up late. Dubnyk out-duels Luongo in the shootout to give the Oilers their first win of the season. Game 2 is less fun. Yakupov nets his first career goal and looks truly joyous to bring the Oilers within 1 in the first. When Justin Schultz nets his first, the celebration is much more subdued as he brings the score to 6-2 as the Sharks smoke the Oilers by a final score of 6-3 in a game that was over after 20 minutes. This roller coaster of emotions leads to a seemingly innocuous Game 3 against the defending Cup champion LA Kings. It starts off with Ladislav Smyth racking up 23 penalty minutes attempting to avenge Eberle with a fight against Jordan Nolan. The game then gets quiet until the Kings punish a Schultz pairing turnover with a Jeff Carter goal. Then it locks down completely. A duel between Dubnyk and Jonathan Quick, fresh off his best ever regular season and a legendary postseason. It's coming down to the game's final minutes, and still the Oilers can't break Quick. But one of their number 1 picks is about to tie it. In hindsight, it's pretty obvious that Gagne is interfering with Quick, but boy does it suck the air out of the building, and some folks head for the exits. But it just makes the next moment that much sweeter.
Here's a shot, rebound, scores! Neil Yakupov!
This kid rocks. Sam Gagner wins it in overtime, but it's Nail that has made himself a star. He has a swagger that this perpetually middling or worse team needs. This kid will lead them out. He's the final piece. The Oilers lose their next game to the Flames, but Dubnyk dazzles against the Avalanche and Coyotes to get the Oilers 2 wins. It is time for a 5-game losing streak, but 3 of them come in overtime or the shootout, so it isn't catastrophic. But dropping games like this in such a short season is tough. 4-4-3, on pace for 48 points. It'll take about 55 to get them in the playoffs. Vegas projects them to finish right around the playoff bubble, so they're a bit behind schedule here. Positives. Devan Dubnyk has arrived. He's very good. There's no doubt that he's their guy going forward. Nail is a scorer, brings a lot of value with his shot. Schultz, Justin of course, is a riverboat gambler, which is fun at least, not good all the time, but fun. He really can't defend at all. It's cool. The biggest win in the early season is the top line. Hall, RNH, and Eberle are terrific. Not just terrific for Edmonton, they're a genuinely great top line. Only 2 lines are producing more chances than them. Florida's Huberdeau, Shore, and Mueller, which is a second line, and Pittsburgh's Kunitz, Crosby, and Dupuis. Now these 3 lines are on a bit of a spectrum. Florida's line can't finish at all, and they give up a ton of chances. They really aren't that great. The Penguins line is finishing at a truly incredible rate, scoring 5.28 goals per 60 minutes. They give up a ton of chances too, but they score so much that it doesn't matter. The Oilers line is kind of in the middle. Hall and Eberle are raking in points, but Nuge is struggling to score, sitting without a goal through his first 10.
He works in, and they score! What a play by...
Where the Oilers are breaking the scale is their defense. When the Oilers' top line is on the ice, it's like both teams get electrified. The Oilers get bombarded in their own end and bombard the opposition. Combine these guys with Schultz, and this team's a blast. Less fun are the 2006 remnants. Hemsky has been decent, but he just doesn't feel like capital A, capital H, Alish Hemsky anymore. Sean Horkoff has looked like post-giant contract Sean Horkoff, that is to say, not great. Worst of all is Ryan Smyth. He signed what looked like a bargain of an extension, and boy does he look like every one of his nearly 37 years. The veteran's dwindling results late last season seem to be the new reality for him. The Oilers hover around 500 before skidding through another 5-game losing streak. So here's the thing. This is almost the exact same team as last year. Personnel-wise, it's extremely similar. Nail Yakupov, he's not a remotely similar player to Smyth, but he replaces his production. Ryan Whitney can't move anymore, and Tom Gilbert was traded. Meet Justin Schultz. He's your offensive defenseman now. There wasn't a single acquisition in the offseason that actually moved the needle for this team. My apologies to Mark Fistrick. The top of the lineup and goaltending are good. Depth forwards and defense stink. Where have I seen this before? You get the impression from everything management put out that treading water wasn't really the intention, but it's the reality. The expectation for this season was the growth of the young guys pushing this team to a competitive level. How much better did you expect them to get? You had a few 70-ish point forwards in 2012. Was the thought for this season, oh, well, if we can get about 100 out of those guys, then we'll be pretty good? That's insane. I know they were afraid of cap contraction, but if management wanted this team to compete this season, and all indications are that they did, they should have done something to make the team better. Now you're probably thinking, oh, they have Horkoff and Whitney and Habibulin's Ghost. They have horrible contracts. This team is capped out with guys that are over the hill. You know how much cap space this team has? $13 million.
Ask the fan base, ask some of the guys on the team, like you're going in and you're giving it your all, but you're kind of looking around like there's not much here, right?
You can't declare that this team has playoff expectations, change nothing, and sit on $13 million in cap space. As the trade deadline quickly approaches in the shortened season, the Oilers are 15-13-7, riding a 4-game winning streak thanks to, who would have guessed, the top line. Hall has 6 goals.
Hall scores!
And the goaltending. Both Dubnyk and Khabibulin have shutouts.
Jackman looking for McGrattan, shot into the glove.
They're on pace to miss the playoffs, and there is just so little time to run teams down in this shortened season. It's probably over. Hey, Steve, you gonna try to move Whitney or Khabibulin as a rental? No? Alright. The Oilers crush the Flames the night of the deadline, but it's just a death rattle as they lose 5 straight yet again without any overtime losses to pad the stats. Finally, the Oilers take action. Steve Tambellini is shown the door, ending a pretty miserable tenure. Replacing him is Craig McTavish. Lowe seems actively angry. Craig McTavish immediately starts talking about how they need to get tougher. This isn't good at all. Time for it to get worse.
I'll just add a piece to that, John. Fair question. The fans, we have 2 types of fans. We have paying customers, and we have people that watch the game that we still care about, but certainly the people that go to the games and support we spend a lot of time talking to them, delivering our message.
Oh, okay, Kevin. I get it. I get what this all is. It's all been about money. It's always been about selling season tickets. Dragging a not very good team through the mires of mediocrity for 3 years, then you trudge through a rebuild, and now, with a team that clearly isn't there yet, saying that it's time to compete and acting shocked when they aren't good. I get why you didn't spend to improve the team. I get why you hyped up this team way above expectations. It's about money. Now you have the nerve to say, oh, actually, this is all Steve's fault. Yeah, man, Steve stunk. But who signed that Horkoff contract? Who was actively Tambellini's boss?
There's one other guy, I believe, in hockey today that's still working in the game that has won more Stanley Cups than me. So I think I know a little bit about winning, if there's ever a concern.
Did you win any of those as an executive, Kevin? Honestly, how many of those did you win without Messier or Gretzky? Who's been here through the past 7 years? The one constant off the ice. It's you, Kevin. This is your mess too. The Oilers putt toward the finish line. They do have a nice end to the season, obliterating Minnesota and Vancouver. Nail logs a hat trick against the B-team Canucks, putting him at 17 goals on the 48-game season. You are not allowed to look at his shooting percentage. It does feel like Ralph Krueger is moving this team in the right direction, and McTavish expressed confidence in the coach at the press conference from hell, so at least the Oilers are stable in that regard. Krueger can sit comfortably on his couch in Switzerland, knowing that he'll be the voice to guide these kids forward. That's weird. Why is Kevin Lowe adding him on Skype? Oh, he's calling. Ralph Krueger has been fired as the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. McTavish didn't like his philosophy, so Krueger's gone. In is Toronto Marlies head coach Dallas Eakins. Eakins is relatively young at 46 years old, and his time with the Marlies has given him a reputation as a great coach for young players. This situation is encapsulated well by the Canadian Press write-up, which states, McTavish admitted the decision to remove Krueger would be disruptive to the Oilers, but he said his other concerns trumped any issues about continuity. McTavish is a self-described impatient man and has promised a tumultuous season to come. He is not lying. Mac T is going to make some moves. His first opportunity is at the draft. The Oilers pick all the way back at 7, so they're out of the running for the 4 elite prospects at the top of the draft. Seth Jones, Nathan McKinnon, Jonathan Drouin, and Alexander Barkov. At 7, the forward-centric Oilers get their new top defense prospect.
With our pick, we're pleased to choose from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Darnell Nurse.
The nephew of longtime NFL quarterback Donovan McNabb, Darnell Nurse is an embodiment of what the Oilers need on defense. Big, strong, with decent offensive upside. Due to his physical maturity, his NHL ETA is sooner rather than later. Due to the delayed season, free agency doesn't start until July 5th of 2013. The date also marks Sean Horkoff's full no-movement clause shifting to a 20-team no-trade list. McTavish immediately jettisons the captain to Dallas in a pure cap dump, getting depth defenseman Philip Larson and a 7th-round pick in return. Then he opens the pocketbook. $1 million in 1 year to new backup Jason LaBarbera. So long, Habibulin. $3.25 million times 4 years to Andrew Ference, a small but hard-nosed defenseman fresh off a nice run with the Bruins. He'll help the defense, but boy, that's a lot of term to give a 34-year-old whose play relies a lot on his physicality. Finally, $3 million times 3 years to Boyd Gordon. Are you serious? You know how many times Boyd Gordon has scored 10 goals? 0. He debuted in 2003. Oh, but he's signed for his defensive impacts. Yeah, those are really good. He is an exceptional defensive forward and a significant upgrade over Eric Belanger on the 4th line. But who were you bidding against? Did Gordon have dirt on McTavish? In modern terms, imagine if in the 2024 offseason, some team signed Zach Aston Reese to a $4 million cap hit for 3 years. That's what we're talking about. I'm not really impressed with Craig's start, but it should have made the team just a little bit better. It's on July 10th that he makes his splash move. Out is Pajärvi with a 2nd and 4th round pick, headed to St. Louis. In return, a 3rd round pick and David Perron.
10 to go in the power play. Here's Perron with it. Fires a shot off the leg. Shattenkirk on goal rebound, and Perron scores!
Perron is the exact type of player this team should be trading for. A young, gifted scorer with 3 years left on his contract at a pretty reasonable cap hit. He'll shield Hemsky and Smyth, allowing them to move to a bottom 6 role. This, again, will be a pretty good forward group. Probably better than last year. Giving up on Pajärvi is a risk, but if the Oilers think they know what kind of player he is and aren't impressed, cutting bait before the rest of the league catches on is wise. Now this is what I'm looking for here, Craig. Now just fix the defense. Watching Alex Plant, Theo Peckham, and Colton Tubert sign elsewhere is really a condemnation of the franchise. Don't get me wrong, these guys weren't good. I'm not bemoaning losing them for nothing. But these were the blue-chip defense prospects just a couple years ago, and none of them will play another NHL game. The Oilers bring back Denis Grebeshkov from Russia, where he hasn't really been good. Grebeshkov went back to Russia the summer after the Oilers traded him to Nashville, essentially in the prime of his career. In the low-scoring KHL, Grebeshkov hasn't really been the offensive driver he had shown flashes of in North America. But he's probably still an improvement on D. Anton Belov is actually the more interesting KHL signing. Another defenseman coming off a great season with Avangard Omsk. But he lacks Grebeshkov's track record. Just Andrew Ference and the KHL guys aren't going to fix the defense, barring a really impressive showing from the Russians. I'm not sure they're that much of a net gain over the departing Fistrick and Whitney. This defense core has been truly horrible for years now, and not doing much of anything to address that is really something. It's a massive bet on Schultz and Petrie becoming the anchors of this group, and I don't know if that's a realistic expectation from what they've shown so far. When preseason rolls around, Dallas Eakins makes his effort to create a new culture surrounding the team. He takes down the pictures of old Oiler teams in the training facilities and in the locker room, replacing them with pictures of the current team. It's meant to show the commitment to moving forward, the commitment to the current core to make a legacy of their own. For an organization often accused of being an old boys club and living in the past, it's a genuinely meaningful gesture from the new coach. Above the players' lockers are new mottos: chop wood, carry water, none of us are as strong as all of us. Less meaningful and more strange is Eakins' exiling of donuts in the team facilities, replacing them with veggie trays. Fitness is important. Not sure why it was changed for the reporters, though. The Canadian press joked that he didn't want to talk about the hole at center. The preseason also brings with it a new captain. The question everyone's been wondering is, will it be one of the young guys, Hall, Eberle, or Gagne, or will it be one of the classic veterans, with a seemingly obvious choice being Ryan Smyth, though he's likely entering his final season. And it's Andrew Ference. Okay. Ference is an all-around great guy and good leader, but it does seem like a strange choice. A guy who has never played a regular season game as an Oiler taking the C. Smyth just seemed like such a slam dunk choice if they were going with a stopgap captain. He is Captain Canada after all. But Ference should be up to the challenge. On opening night, the Oilers are without RNH. He's expected to miss a decent amount of time to start the season, hence the comment earlier about the hole at center. Edmonton strikes quickly, a connection on their fourth line from Will Acton and Luke Gazdic. Now, if you're saying to yourself, these guys sound like fake guys that would be generated 20 years into a franchise mode simulation, drafted somewhere between Bill Ovechkin and Steve Yager, you'd be wrong. Acton is coming off a solid season where he put up 19 points in 67 games. Gazdic had just 11 points in his 59 games. By the way, these are their totals with the Toronto Marlies and Texas Stars, respectively. Alright. The Oilers fall behind, but their next goal comes from Boyd Gordon on the power play. This is Gordon's 487th career game, and his first power play goal. Is this game a fever dream? Yeah, of course the Oilers take a 4-2 lead with a Jesse Joensuu power play goal. Why not? Finally, something semi-predictable happens as the Oilers' defense completely melts down and Edmonton loses, getting thoroughly embarrassed by Eric Tangradi. Game 2 is more of the same. The Oilers take an early lead, they get utterly embarrassed, and Boyd Gordon scores.
Henske right back to Gordon. He scores! Boyd Gordon!
At times, the Canucks look like the Harlem Globetrotters. The Oilers look genuinely horrible. Dubnyk is no exception. He got a bad shake in Game 1. In Game 2, he lets in a few stinkers. The season's third game sees Jason LaBarbera take the net for the first time this year, and Nuge returns well ahead of schedule. The Devils pick up right where the Canucks left off, with 41-year-old Jaromir Jagr waltzing in and scoring. The Devils soon extend their lead to 3-0, but the Oilers storm back in the third, taking the lead with 4 goals of their own, including Andrew Ference's first goal as an Oiler.
Ference now, opposite side, he scores! Andrew Ference let it rip.
Unfortunately, his second as an Oiler comes when he kicks the puck right underneath LaBarbera, tying the game for the Devils in the final minute. Luckily, the Oilers' undeniable skill takes the game in the shootout. At 1-2, tomorrow will be a new day. 5 straight losses. From the outside, the goaltending looks really rancid, and it is. Dubnyk and LaBarbera look very bad, but not quite as bad as the defense, which really doesn't do them a single favor.
Off the boards, poke check by Beloff. Kadri, right in the front, score! Jeffrey Lupul!
Back-to-back wins against Ottawa and Montreal relieve some of the pressure, but this season still looks ugly. 3 more close losses. In a quote found in the Edmonton Journal, Eakins states that the team will be backing away from the Swarm defensive zone system. The Swarm, which emphasizes early shutdowns with multiple players collapsing on the puck carrier upon zone entry, relies very heavily on mobile, strong-in-their-stick defensemen and heavily engaged wingers, even more so than typical D-zone systems. The Oilers don't really have any of these guys. They do not have remotely the personnel to run this system well. Eberle and Hall are high-flying, no-defense wingers. They were never going to thrive in the Swarm. Eakins also claims that the Oilers didn't understand defensive zone fundamentals either, and that he was wrong to throw them in the deep end assuming they did. Now, one of 2 things is true. Either Dallas Eakins is stupid, or he's not telling the truth here. I personally lean toward the latter. Eakins was preceded by Ralph Krueger, whose entire gimmick was his defensive systems. It also makes Eakins look a lot better to say, oh, actually, my system is a great fit for the team, but I couldn't make it work because of the last guy, as opposed to, my system is a horrible fit for this roster, and the D-zone play sucks so bad that I have to change it 13 games into the season. Right after this talk, the Oilers get thumped 4-0, then 5-0. They aren't even pretending to be any good. Ference would defend Eakins years later, saying to Elliot Friedman on what was then 31 Thoughts, "You could have had any kind of defense or any kind of system. If you go on a Western swing and your guys are out every single night until 5 a.m., you're not going to win too many games.
Your urge to win and be bold is less than your urge to not be the whipping boy or stand out, right?
There's a combination of a probably in over his head coach, a bunch of guys that don't care and are calling each other tryhards in practice, and a massive amount of pressure from both management and the media that is making this situation less and less tenable. Eakins is easy to poke at, but this whole franchise is broken. The Oilers win in OT against a bad Panthers team, then get to work on another 5-game losing streak. During the streak, they ship off long-tenured D-man Ladislav Smyth, along with goalie prospect Olivier Waugh, to the Flames in exchange for young depth forward Roman Horak and slightly younger goalie prospect Laurent Brossoit. It seems like a weird time to trade Smyth with a Schultz hurt and Grebishkov being sent to the AHL after proving to be a non-factor. But the Oilers certainly do need help on their fourth line, and Horak could bring that. Edmonton also brings in some extra help in goal via free agent signing, a man fresh off being one of the compliance buyouts granted by the new CBA. Ilya Bryzgalov.
That's a hockey, you know, it's only a game. Why you have to be mad? He's a good guy. He may be tired to live here, and because here is in November month is a minus 32.
Going into the 2011 season, the pending free agent Bryzgalov was coming off a pair of tremendous seasons with the Coyotes, having finished 2nd and 6th in Vezina voting. It wasn't just those 2 seasons that made Bryzgalov a prize. He had a generally stellar track record dating back to his sensational play in the 2006 playoffs with the Ducks. The eternally seeking a goalie Flyers opt to jump to the front of the line, sending a 3rd-round pick to Phoenix for their star netminders negotiating rights, and immediately signing him to a massive deal. The deal imploded almost immediately with a horrific playoff run in 2012 and a painful 2013 regular season that saw the Russian stock drop from one of the best goalies in the league to the guy who says silly things and is bad. A $2 million cap hit seems a little steep for a mid-season signing here for the Oilers, but it's only 1 year, so the risk is minimal. The Oilers do win 7 of their next 11 after the streak, but even that only brings their record to 11, 18, and 3. 6 more losses. Panic is starting to set in. So long, Jason LaBarbera. Hello, future considerations. The Oilers win twice and lose in overtime over their next 3 games. They have over twice as many losses as they have wins at the season's midpoint, with a record of 13, 24, and 4. Let's check in with some individuals and do some mid-season report cards. Taylor Hall, David Perron, you get nice shiny A's. You're playing right up to expectations. We are grading on a pretty significant curve here. Eberle, Nuge, Justin Schultz, Petrie, you're our B students. A little below expected, but you're probably being asked to do way too much. Smyth, Hemsky, Ference, you're still passing with C's. You all just aren't nearly as good as you used to be, but you're still going out there and giving it your all. Everyone with a D grade. Gagne, Nick Schultz, Dubnyk, Yakupov. All I'm trying to say is that we need more from you. We know you're capable, or at least we've been telling ourselves that you are. We're not failing anyone just yet, but I need everyone to keep trying. Please, this team is very bad. On January 15th, McTavish makes a genuinely awful trade. Devin Dubnyk, at 50% salary retention, goes to Nashville in exchange for Matt Hendricks. The trade is 1-for-1. The Oilers are selling Dubnyk at his absolute lowest. Yes, they probably weren't going to be able to re-sign him in the offseason. But why not at least wait to the trade deadline? Don't you think you'd have gotten better offers? Dubnyk wasn't going to tank his value any more than he already has. Hendricks is a negative asset. He's signed for 1.5 for 3 more years after this. The Predators actively don't want him. You could have had him for free. He's literally just Boyd Gordon 2. He costs half the money and is half as good. You couldn't get a pick or anything at all? Did you even talk to anyone else? Looking ahead, on deadline day, the Flames are going to get a second-round pick for Reto Berra, another 27-year-old with bad numbers like Dubnyk, but he's playing his first NHL season and doesn't have nearly the track record. Look, the Kings just got a third for Ben Scrivens from, the Oilers. Welcome, Ben Scrivens. Scrivens has actually been having a spectacular year with the Kings and is extremely cheap salary-wise at just $612.5K. The problem with this trade is the Oilers are buying as high as possible on Scrivens, who is playing behind maybe the most goalie-friendly system in the league. His debut comes in a tough night against Minnesota with, you'll be shocked to hear, some bad defensive play in front of him. But Scrivens quickly silences doubters with strong games against Vancouver and Nashville. His biggest challenge yet will come against an extremely talented San Jose Sharks squad and their top line of Joe Thornton, Joe Pavelski, and Brent Burns. From the outset, the Sharks bombard Scrivens with shot after shot. The Oilers look inspired by their netminder. They look possessed. They aren't playing well, but they're hurling themselves in front of pucks, with Boyd Gordon and Ryan Jones racking up 5 blocks each. The crowd seems increasingly joyous, but they also sound like if a puck gets past Scrivens, that they'll cease to exist. A San Jose franchise record in shots are fired toward the Oilers goalie, 59 in total. Every Shark, with the exception of Pavelski and Niemi, puts a shot on net. Not a single one goes in. The Oilers win 3-0, and the crowd erupts.
History here in Edmonton.
Scrivens has set the NHL record for saves in a shutout, 5 more than the previous record of 54. The Oilers have once again found the remarkable amongst the dismal. So dismal, in fact, that Kevin Lowe has finally decided to resign. And Daryl Cates won't let him. Cool. The Oilers go 3-2-2 between the Sharks game and the trade deadline, but they are hopelessly out of the playoffs, so it's time to sell. First, McT's signature trade a goalie, obtain a goalie strategy for the 4th time this season. Bryz, who has been perfectly mediocre, goes to the Wild for a 4th. Immediately, the Oilers grab his replacement, giving up a 3rd and a 5th for Anaheim's Victor Faust. Faust was a late bloomer, working his way up from Sweden's 4th division to become a star in the Swedish Elite League. Just last season, he made the jump to North America with the Ducks and was electric almost immediately, forcing his way into a committee with Jonas Hiller. This season hasn't gone as well for the veteran sophomore. He is one of 4 NHL-caliber goalies the Ducks have on their roster, leaving him with just 5 starts on the year. I don't know if he and Scrivens are really the tandem of the future, but they're interesting at least. The true sells come after. Nick Schultz for a 5th to Columbus in a sure why not move, then the heartbreaker. Ales Hemsky hasn't been himself for a long time, but it's still sad to see a guy that was once such an electrifying player depart. He'll join an Ottawa team clamoring to get into the playoffs in exchange for a 3rd and a 5th, essentially recouping what was traded for Faust. As an aside, Dubnyk did end up tanking his value even further for the Predators, who sent him to Montreal for future considerations. The Oilers near the end of their season. This last stretch, they're merely bad, not horrible, punctuated by Taylor Hall accidentally splashing Eakins with a thrown water bottle. A lot of the success comes back to Scrivens, who has been quite good. Faust, not so much. The day before the Oilers' 82nd game, Ryan Smyth announces it will be his last with a speech to his teammates.
I don't have any regrets on playing this game. I do have a loss of not winning a Stanley Cup as a player. That's one thing I wish I would have had. But I didn't, and that's okay. Because there's life after hockey, and I'm very blessed to have my family.
Tonight, Smyth, as always, wears his heart on his sleeve, and, thanks to Andy Ference's deferral, a C on his chest. The Oilers win, but the game itself doesn't matter. As the final horn sounds, a tearful Smyth waves goodbye to the crowd. Smyth was the embodiment of heart. He left everything he had on the ice every night. This team, this franchise, won't be the same without him, but maybe Smyth's retirement is the beginning of a new chapter. It's been 8 years. The misery has to end eventually, doesn't it? Because this team is allergic to stability, they gut the coaching staff, firing assistants Kelly Buchberger and Steve Smyth. Somehow, this team has only one pick in the first 90 selections, 3rd overall. The lottery balls didn't drop for them to snag consensus number 1 Aaron Ekblad, a big offensive defenseman that this team desperately needs. Ekblad, as expected, goes first to Florida, followed by Sam Reinhart to the lowly 52-point Sabres. At 3rd, the Oilers have a few choices. Sam Bennett is a speedy, hard-nosed center that put up tons of points and tons of penalty minutes in the OHL, but a disastrous combine has hurt his draft stock. Michael Dow-Cole is a tall and skilled winger at 6'3", but slight at just 171 pounds. Then, the man Craig McTavish has campaigned for unrelentingly, Leon Draisaitl, a big, smart German center that has been terrific since moving to the WHL 2 seasons ago. The Oilers pick is in.
The Edmonton Oilers are very pleased to select from the Western Hockey League Prince Albert Raiders, Leon Draisaitl.
A center really seemed like the only pick here. The Oilers have established wings and have 2 top defense prospects in Nurse and Oscar Klefbom. The Nuge and Gagne pairing hasn't been what was hoped, but Leon and Nuge could be a force. The day after the draft, the Oilers immediately show their confidence in Draisaitl, trading Sam Gagne to the Lightning for middle six winger Teddy Purcell. Gagne's contract he signed last offseason that was worth $4.8 million per year for 3 years has aged like milk, and the forward took a big step back in 2014 after a breakout 2013. Sam will be 25 at the start of the season, and it's reasonable to believe he's reached his ceiling. Teddy Purcell is a valuable secondary scorer who also probably gets paid too much at $4.5 million per year for 2 more years. Trading Gagne for a wing is strange though. Barring an acquisition, the second-line center position will be filled by either Mark Arcabello, Boyd Gordon, or the 19-year-old Draisaitl, which is what the Oilers are obviously hoping for. There are free agents that could rectify this situation, namely 2 unrelated Jokinens, who both had massive bounce-back seasons in 2014. Ole would be the higher-risk signing due to his age, but a good bit cheaper. Jussi is probably the better fit, playing exceptionally well as a center and a wing up and down the lineup for a strong Penguins team.
Crosby coming in, throws it to the front and they score! What a beautiful goal by Jokinen!
If Leon is immediately an impact player, Jussi can move to the third line or the wing. He would be a great Swiss Army knife for this team to have. Unfortunately, center is not on McTavish's mind, immediately spending $4 million in cap space for 5 years on winger Benoit Pouliot and $3.625 in cap space for 4 years on Mark Fane. He had also already traded for Nikita Nikitin's negotiating rights and extended him to a contract with a $4.5 million hit for 2 years. These guys are good players. Pouliot is a strong, 2-way secondary scorer that should fit onto the third line. Fane and Nikitin are very good third-pairing defensemen. But the Oilers just spent $12.1 million in cap space on 3 perfectly good depth players. That's an absolute premium for guys that are a luxury, and that's not even taking into account their term. You better have a ton of faith that Draisaitl, Nurse, and Klefbom are going to be borderline elite players immediately, because you have one other good center, and Petrie and Schultz have shown they can't carry the defense. It isn't really a surprise when the Oilers suck right out of the gate. 5 straight losses. The goaltending, both Fost and Scrivens, are awful, and the Oilers have sent Nurse hurtling back to the AHL after just 2 games. The team changes themes, winning 4 in a row and then losing another 4 in a row. So far, this team is actually the best possession team the Oilers have had in the advanced stats era, but no one is finishing and the goaltending is truly rancid. Back-to-back wins in November bring the team to a salvageable 6-8-1. Then they just crumble. They lose all but one of their next 21 games.
Yannick Hansen, shorthanded, scores!
November 22nd, following a 7-1 loss to the Blackhawks, the Oilers get booed off the ice by their home fans. December 12th, Victor Foss lets in 2 goals in the first minute of the second period in a game against the Ducks, gets pulled, and proceeds to scream at his teammates. It's partly warranted, but it's not like Foss has been any good at all this season, with the Swede gaining a reputation for pulling himself from games. December 15th, the team fires Eakins, who is replaced by interim coach Todd Nelson.
I will tell you this, that Craig's on it. Craig's on it.
It was definitely Eakins' fault that this team was bad. They're finally getting good possession numbers for the first time in a decade, but what he should have done is say, listen, Ben, Victor, what I need you guys to do is stop more pucks. And he didn't do it. Eakins was in over his head in the 2014 season, but he actually seemed to be making strides with the team this season. This franchise uses coach firing as a pressure release. When external pressure starts to get high on management, they can the coach and say, yeah, this team was bad because of Craig or Pat or Tom or Ralph or Dallas. Weird that all these coaches have been awful. It seems like either the person in charge is exclusively hiring coaches that stink, or the person in charge is putting together a horrific roster every year. The pressure release valve isn't relieving as much as it used to.
So I think I know a little bit about winning.
Particularly baffling here too is that the players, except for now Yakupov, liked Eakins. In a quote preserved by Cam Tucker of NBC Sports following that 7-1 loss to Chicago that got the Oilers booed off the ice, Taylor Hall showed a new level of maturity, stating how unfair it would be to Dallas if he got fired. Ference and Nurse will both say years later that Eakins got a raw deal. Sean Gentili, then of the Sporting News season, stating that the responsibility surrounding the roster construction, finding decent draft picks outside the second round, or assembling an okay second pairing via free agency, falls on McTavish, and before him, Steve Tambellini. Before Tambellini, it was Kevin Lowe. It's still Kevin Lowe, actually, who's most responsible for assembling Edmonton's current group. Everyone knows the problem, except those with the power to fix it. Namely, Daryl Cates. Now Todd Nelson is not an experienced head coach, so of course he needs a mentor to man the bench with him. Oh well, what do you know? It's Craig McTavish. On December 29th, the Oilers decide Mark Arcobello is not the answer as the second-line center and trade him to Nashville for the perpetually underrated Derek Roy. Roy is over the hill at this point, buried by injuries, but he really can't be any worse than what the Oilers have been sending out every night. On January 1st, following a game where he had 2 primary assists in just 9 minutes of ice time, the struggling Leon Draisaitl is sent back to juniors to keep him away from unrestricted free agency for an additional year. He wasn't ready for the NHL, but he is too good for juniors. It might have made more sense for the German to have played in the DEL or another European league, but instead he'll languish with the Kelowna Rockets, scoring well over 1.5 points per game. He's replaced on the Oilers by the re-emerging Anton Lander. This team is in dead last in a league with multiple other teams trying to lose. The Sabres are firing every goalie that knows what a puck is into the sun, trying to get worse. The Coyotes' highest scoring forward is good old Sam Gagner. They also have Devin Dubnyk, who starts to find his game again, so they chuck him as quickly as possible. These teams are doing this to catch the Oilers, a team that went into this season trying as hard as possible to win. It's all for a shot at the best prospect since Sidney Crosby, a speedster playing in northern Pennsylvania, Connor McDavid. While Hall, RNH, and Yakupov had plenty of hype, they don't hold a candle to McDavid. This kid will change the trajectory of whatever team he lands on overnight, and the Oilers have stumbled their way into a great chance to get him. The Oilers embraced the tank on January 2nd. David Perron is traded to the Penguins for a first-round pick and depth forward Rob Klinkhammer. The Oilers don't need to dump goalies. Fost and Scrivens are bad enough to help the tank. Then, the worst-case scenario comes through. The Oilers start winning. Not a lot, they're still well under even fake 500, but a stretch of 10, 13, and 1 from January 4th to the trade deadline might ruin everything. Buffalo and Arizona aren't messing around, going 5, 16, and 2 and 5, 17, and 3 respectively during the same span. It's Eberle and Nuge dragging this carcass of a team forward with Taylor Hall injured. Oscar Klefbom is a genuine positive too. He's mostly tasked with covering for Schultz, which is a tall order, but when he's paired with another strong two-way guy in Jeff Petrie, the two see some strong results, controlling 53.6% of the expected goals according to MoneyPuck. To save their season, the Oilers trade Jeff Petrie to Montreal for a second and a fourth-round pick. But as the season draws to a close, the Oilers show they have a propensity for losing in overtime, going 6, 8, and 4 in their last 18 games. Their point total on the season sits at 62, well north of Arizona's 56 and Buffalo's 54. The Oilers only have one more win than the Sabres and the same number of wins as Arizona, but their 14 overtime losses are a killer. The Oilers have somehow both been horrible and blown their chance at a generational talent. Why even bother watching the draft lottery?
And we have a winner. The first overall pick in the 2015 NHL draft belongs to the Edmonton Oilers.
This changes everything.
Spector keeps it in, lets the shot go, and scores! Cutting through the middle was Connor McDavid.